Our speaker today is Tara Aker. Tara is an enterprise account executive for the life sciences and automotive industries at eMaint, a Fluke Reliability Company. For the past 12 years, she has specialized in evaluations and implementations of SaaS-based solutions across enterprise platforms, focusing on a best practices approach. You're here for I need a CMS, but where to start? The journey of transitioning to a new CMMS. Tara, take it away.
Perfect. Thank you, Robin. And thank you all for joining in today for the next hour to talk a little bit about the best methods to prepare transitioning your CMS program. As Robin mentioned, just a quick introduction. My name is Tara Acree. I'm one of the enterprise account executives here with Fluke Corporation. I do have about 12 years in the maintenance and reliability industry with a background in reliability. So as Robin mentioned, I do specialize with life sciences, automotive, and healthcare. But in 12 years, I've worked across all different industries and all different sizes, from one single location and then one maintenance manager working at a department to Fortune 100 and global rollouts. So I do have a good background in different sizes and different industries, and I hope to make this session today really applicable to the group as a whole, and cover the basics of transitioning to a CMS program. Fun fact about me is while I do have over a decade of experience in maintenance and reliability, I am very new to the mom world. So as I signed up to perform this webinar before going on maternity leave, I hope we have a lot to cover that I remember post-maternity leave. So any advice, always welcomed. As I mentioned, new to that world. So I do want to start with a very quick poll and make sure everybody's awake today. So understanding the group on the line, just where are you in your current CMS journey? If you're at the very beginning of just considering a new CMS program, or if you're already in the final stages of implementing your CMS program and just trying to see, is there anything I missed or anything that I want to learn from this?
And Tara, I've launched the poll. Hopefully you can see it on your screen also.
All right, perfect. So great. Yeah, it looks like we have some results starting to come in. And yeah, it seems like people are really kind of covering a good variety and anywhere from the beginning to just researching and background phase. So I think we have a good mix of the group on the line today, and we'll hopefully be able to cover things that are relevant to each of you. All right. So always think it's helpful to start with an agenda. Make sure that you're in the right webinar. If you're looking for how to plan your Disney vacation, this is not the one for you. So what we're going to cover today is really that transition for a CMS journey. The basics of a CMS transition is always going to be data. I have these conversations a lot with different groups, and whenever I have the hour-long conversation, the first 45 minutes of it is spent on data. What is my data in a good format for me to convert over? Should I change it over from my existing platform? Should I start fresh? What data should I even be capturing? Do I have that right information? So we're actually going to spend probably the majority of today covering data as well. But there are other topics as well. So once you have the data in a good format, looking at setting up short-term goals. When you get a CMS program in place, it's to solve a problem. So why am I getting the system in place in the first point? So is it to help reduce my downtime? Do I want to help get my on-time preventative maintenance work orders completed and help increase those work order completion rates to help reduce unexpected equipment downtime? Having those short-term goals of why we're getting the system in place, but then also the longer-term goals of where can we continuously improve, and then also trying to align on those goals. And I'm just going to turn my camera off as well. It's breaking up a little bit. So I'm still here, but turn the camera off. So we talked about aligning with those goals. That could also be corporate alignment. So if there are corporate initiatives that you're looking at, trying to get that buy-in from your team and align with your own team's goals, department goals, but then from a larger corporate perspective. Planning for success. So a project like this really does deserve the proper planning, making sure that you're allocating the right time for this kind of implementation, making sure that you're planning for training. Training is so important. We're going to cover all of that as we get towards the end. And then finally, choosing the right vendor partner. So of course, I do work for a maintenance management provider, but I'm going to try to keep this as neutral as possible. In the 12 years I've been doing this, there are so many good CMS and EAM platforms out there. I've seen ones that were popular 20 years ago. If you think about like your MP2s of the world, one of the most popular systems out there, a lot of people have been transitioning from just, no longer supported. But then also the ones that are available today with some of the new innovations. There's really good features, but then when it comes to selecting a vendor partner, there's so much more than features, experience, longevity, and making sure you have that background with reliability. So that being said, we're going to cover a lot today. This conversation usually does take me about an hour, so I'm hoping to condense it and leave some time for questions. Please feel free to post questions in the chat. I'm not going to pause as we go through, but we will respond to those questions at the end. And as Robin mentioned, if there's not enough time to respond, we'll absolutely follow up with you and get those questions answered through writing. Small disclaimer here. So there are a lot of people on the line, and there's a lot of different sizes of organizations on the line. So this could be someone that is looking at a smaller implementation for just their department and just their site. This could be a group on the line that is looking for a global rollout that could take several years or could take a much more in-depth planning. The goal for today is to make this conversation beneficial for everyone on the line so that when you leave here, you can say, oh, I did learn something that was helpful, whether it's how to gather the right data or how to properly plan. I'm really trying to make sure you're dedicating an hour of your time. Time is the most valuable commodity. So I want to make sure you're getting value out of this. So if we go through this and you say, well, that's way too large or that's way too small, remember it can be scaled up and down according to your needs. And that's really where the benefit of having that right vendor partner comes into play. That being said, we're going to start the journey, and hopefully there's a few Hobbit fans on the line that love my image as much as I do. So we'll get started. So first, want to start with the foundation, data. Data is so critical. I think everyone on the line here knows that you need to make sure you have the right data when you're starting a program like this. And this will be my second and final poll question. I promise I won't make you interact after this. But for those on the line today, just want to get an understanding of where is your data? Is it in a program and it's sparkly and clean and beautiful? Is it all in your head and tribal knowledge? So we'll start that poll and see just a little bit of background on where everybody is today. All right. So starting to get a few responses. So good. It looks like there is a good variety of where everything is today. Many of you do have it in a good program. I always like and laugh a little bit at the response of what data. So it looks like there is a pretty good variety of where things are. So for those of you looking for tips on that data, this is going to be relevant for you. So when it comes to gathering data and migrating it to your new CMMS platform, there's two options, and we'll cover both today. The first is a data conversion. I talk with a lot of organizations that have a CMMS program in place. They're migrating, either it's not currently meeting their needs, maybe it's no longer supported and it's outdated, but either way, they need to migrate over. And a lot of times the first thing you hear is, okay, great, we're just going to dump all that data in our new platform. That could be a good option. But there are things to consider. So there's benefits to a data migration. One, it will carry over all of that historical accuracy. So if you're either just an organization that wants to carry over that work order history so you can properly pull reports like repetitive failures or cost of failures on machines for repair versus replace, great. We want to carry that data over so you have accurate data. Or if you're an organization where you're actually mandated to carry over historical data. So healthcare industries, the Joint Commission requirements mandate that you have to carry over 5 years worth of work order history. A lot of industrial manufacturing or, for example, automotive, the customers will mandate that you have to have a certain amount of years of data on that machine. So you may have to keep that historical accuracy. And then also the benefit of a migration is it's going to free up your internal resources because you're not going to be gathering the data. You're just having your provider migrate that for you. So there's definitely benefits to it, but there are things that you should be aware of and things that you should plan for if you opt for this route. So one, the quality of the data. I worked with a gentleman, and this poor gentleman has been my example for years, but he said, Tara, I don't have the resources to gather the data. I know my data is not good, but I have to migrate it over. It's the only way I'll get started. So we did the data conversion and we went on site and, we had a trainer call and say, he has overdue work orders from 1997. So, that's not the kind of data you want to migrate over. If you are going to do a data migration, you have to scrub the data first. It's a best practice going through, making sure that you have the assets that are up to date, things that haven't been retired unless you need to carry those over. Inventory is always a big focus for data migration. Is your inventory clean? A lot of the times they're not. You have parts that are still in there from retired equipment. You have parts that maybe aren't even in the inventory anymore. They're just still listed. So, giving the data a good scrub, making sure it's cleaned up because that provider is going to migrate whatever you give them. So scrub it before you send it to them. And then also making sure, what data you want to migrate. So maybe you have data that you need to carry over, but you're only going to carry over your assets, your tasks, your preventative maintenance schedules. We're not going to carry over any inventory, any contact data. Historical data is just going to be archived, so you'll still keep a copy of it, but not carry it over. So consider also not just having that data, everything doesn't need to carry over. Documents and pictures, we're going to talk a lot about this in a little bit, but make sure you're telling your provider if you just want that raw data or if you want documents, pictures associated. So certificates of calibration with your calibration records, for example, have to be converted. There are things that you should ask your provider regardless of the CMS or EAM system that you choose. So you should always own your data. That I think is hopefully a standard practice with most software providers, but make sure, do I own my data? When we migrate it over, I need to make sure I can get a backup file should anything change and have that. Ask them their data conversion process. I've unfortunately spoken with a lot of groups that have said, yeah, we actually did a migration to a new platform about 5 years ago. They just dumped everything in there. So nothing, the hierarchies aren't correct. There's fields all misplaced and we've learned to live with it, but it wasn't good. So you should always ask your provider, what is your data conversion process? There should be at least 2 steps to your conversion, convert it into a sandbox account for review, making sure it's accurate, and then the final conversion, if not more. So making sure that they have experience in converting previous programs, making sure that they have a documented process and how they verify that with you. You never want to be in the position of them just dumping the data and saying, well, here you go. Also making sure that, again, you're talking about attachments. So if you are just converting raw data versus if you need to have pictures and documents converted, those are really good things to talk with your provider about and make sure that they're aware of. Some providers do that, some providers do not, but it's something you want to know up front. Now, for those of you that are not starting with a current CMS provider and starting fresh, I actually love starting fresh. This is my preferred option because it's starting with a whole clean slate. You get to go in and you get to decorate everything and get it all nice and new and organized. There are definitely benefits to it. So typically, if you are gathering your data fresh in an Excel format, most providers and most EAM and CMS programs will import that at no cost. That is not the case for everyone, so always ask, of course, but it is usually a no-cost service. Or if it is, it's a very low cost compared to a conversion. And then also you're starting with this nice shiny data that you've taken a lot of time and effort into organizing. So that it's that overuse saying of good data in, good data out. So everything is going to be cleaned up and organized. Now, there are some things to consider when you do a data import. So kind of those pros and cons. You'll need to plan resources, whether those are internal resources, whether you're contracting out with a provider, and we'll go through that in a little bit. It is going to require resources to get all that data together. And that's not just people to collect it, but time to collect it. So is this going to take several weeks, several months? So if you need a system up and running quickly, you want to make sure you're allocating the right time to gathering your data. And then collect good data. We're going to talk for the next 5 slides about what data is good data. So don't just do the minimum and say, okay, here's my asset descriptions and my asset IDs. You want to make sure that you're getting the right data, because that's going to be, again, the foundation for everything. Things to ask your CMS provider. So most providers do offer a data import template, or if you're not even working with a CMS provider, if you're working with a data collection company or like a consulting company, they do typically have templates you can use. Almost always it's going to be an Excel or CSV format, so you can import it into the program. I do always ask, and I recommend, hey, can I import my own data? It's great to have the provider do it for you, but it's also really nice to know you can do it yourself. You don't have to contact them. So it is a nice question to ask if you want to add more assets down the road, or if you need to overwrite records, being able to know you have that power yourself. And then any best practices. So any organization that's been doing this for a long time should have best practices for data gathering and data import. So your CMS provider is your vendor partner. That's someone that's going to be working with you. So they should be able to recommend those best practices and what they would offer. All right, so good data principles. So what is good data and how can we make sure we have it? I always recommend that you think about the metrics you want to pull, which is kind of a funny thought. If you think about that, the metrics and the reports are usually your end result. Once you have data in there, once you have work orders created, that's what you're going to be doing towards the end and say, oh, now I can report on this information. But you have to have the information up front to pull those reports. So for example, if you want to pull reports on downtime has to be documented in the system. It has to either be a field on an asset or work order that you're having auto-populated from a SCADA system or production software. Maybe it's calculating based on start and stop times or equipment status changes. It automatically timestamps that downtime, but it needs to be in your program and it needs to be calculated for you to pull a report on it. Repetitive failures, if you want to start to see why does this equipment consistently fail? Why is it one of my bad actors? You need to document failure codes. You need to be able to say, oh, okay, well, this is one of my machines that fails the most, and here's the reason why. So think about some of the metrics. If you are using manual methods, think about that whiteboard on your wall of here's the reports that I look at. So open work orders by status, work orders waiting on parts that are on order. Think about the data that you need to report up to your superiors on quarterly reviews or end of year budgets. Those are the metrics that you should have in your program, and that's how you should backtrack into what data to collect. At a very high level, we want to standardize data as much as possible. That includes creating required fields. So when someone goes to enter a work order or an asset record, there's certain required fields they always have to fill out. And then whenever possible, drop-down list instead of free-form text fields. So that would be the opposing. If you have asset types, work order types, failure codes, those are all things that should be drop-downs, priority levels we'll talk through. But if you need to pull a report on top spend broken down by equipment type, you would need to have equipment type standardized. You need to know that everyone is using the term air handler and not HVAC unit, AC unit, air handler, air conditioning, whatever they want to call it. So you need to have that standardized data to pull the best metrics. Also trying to build a knowledge base as much as possible. So as you're gathering this data, take photos of the equipment, get the instruction manuals for the equipment. I had a customer, it was just a year where a lot of their team members were retiring. So they were losing so much tribal knowledge. And they actually had that their senior team members, before they retired, go out and record videos of how to do a job, and they embedded that in their work orders. So embed videos, have videos, how-to videos, especially as you have turnover. Every industry does. As you have turnover, those pictures, that documents, those videos are going to ultimately lead to the job being done better and your equipment staying up longer. SOPs, same concept. So get standard operating procedures in there, link those standard operating procedures. One, you may require that given your industry. So calibration industry, you have to refer to the SOP that was used for the calibration record. That should be documented on your work order. But also, just as a best practice, you should have standard operating procedures in place on how to fix a machine, so that no matter what, you're always following the same processes. Again, it keeps that equipment up and running longer, and it ensures that you're doing the job the right way. And that should be linked to your equipment and your work orders. And then whenever possible, if you can align with other departments, the first priority is always going to be making your job easier. So making the maintenance, keeping equipment up and running, getting work orders completed faster, getting a better completion rate. So it's going to be on that maintenance side. But if you can coordinate with other departments to provide metrics that are helpful for them, if it's for production, to let them know what machines are coming due for maintenance so that they can better plan and schedule. If it's for purchasing, to know here are the parts that we need to order, and here's the average lead time for those parts. So trying to coordinate to enable those departments to help you better, and then coordinate with any corporate initiatives. I worked with a group where they actually, in a very cool way, they used the software for EH&S, and they actually tracked incidents in the program. So when there was like a safety incident, and one of the corporate initiatives was to help reduce the number of safety incidents that happened at the plant. So that's why they put it in the program. They found that actually the number one safety incident was a laceration. That was what was documented. And it was because when a tech would go to replace a certain part, these parts are dirty. They're kept in, well, their tool crib was a little dirty. It was in cardboard boxes and shelves that had dust everywhere. The tech wouldn't check for debris in the part before they replaced it. So their hand would slip. They go to replace the part, it would get caught on debris, their hand would slip, and it would cause a laceration. They were able to actually have that documented and then backtrack it to include a step in their standard operating procedure of, remove debris prior to, evaluate, look in part, wipe down clean, remove debris before replacing, and it helped reduce those lacerations. Because of that, they were able to help with their corporate initiative, which was, a way of justifying the system. All right, so getting into the nitty gritty now. What data should we capture? So you've been talking about all this good data. What's good data to capture? I tried to keep this really high level. More than happy to have longer conversations with anyone one-on-one. There's so much good data. I love my account. I love the data I capture because there's so much good data you can capture, but I'm trying to make it appeal to the masses here. So there's always the basics: nameplate information, asset ID, asset description, manufacturer, model, serial number, parent asset should always be on every record. We'll talk about standardizing asset IDs and descriptions in a bit, but this is that information that should always be listed on the equipment record, as well as likely on a barcode or QR code on the machine. If you want to start to calculate repair versus replace, I think everyone does. Not only do you want to know if a piece of equipment is starting to age out because you don't want it to start breaking down and causing unexpected downtime, but you don't want to spend your team's time continuously repairing a piece of equipment that should have been replaced 5 years ago. You need to justify trying to replace that. So I always think I always recommend capturing purchase date, purchase cost, and life expectancy, so you can pull reports on when equipment is starting to age out. And then any kind of compliance information that could be asset criticality. If you have certain rankings, that's a good drop-down field to have. So you're standardizing criticality. Or if you're doing calculations like RIME ranking in order to determine that criticality for assets or work orders, just make sure you have the field no matter how you're calculating it. And then anything that is regulated. So if it's EPA, GMP, if you're food and bev, SQF regulated, always good to have kind of like a checkbox field on there so that when you pull reports, you can say, oh, okay, this is the work order completion rates for our GMP regulated equipment. This is the work order completion rates for our, safety equipment. These are the emissions for EPA regulated equipment or meter readings. So it is a good differentiator when you go to pull reports. There's a lot more asset data you could put on here. This is a small sampling, but just kind of the basics. Work orders. Again, this is one that is really open to interpretation. So you're going to have different types of work orders: preventative, corrective, predictive, safety, quality, calibration. So each one's going to have different features. But you have your basics, your create a date, your schedule date, your due date, priority levels. Priority levels should be a standardized field that should, again, be auto-calculated either on RIME ranking, or it should be a standard drop-down list, maybe that automatically assigns based on asset criticality. Work order type. You'll have a lot of different work order types. You can see here, I do have that as a standardized table. So people have to choose from my work order types. Again, when you pull reports, you want them to be equal to specific types for your reports. Overall reporting metrics. Notes and comments is always going to be a free form text field. I've seen people try to drop down and make it drop downs. It's doable, but it's just, you want to leave it open kind of to interpretation. You could do a combination, like a drop down and a free-form text, but you want to make sure people can actually add in additional comments. Failure codes is always a good one. A lot of people don't do this up front. You should always do this up front. So why is a piece of equipment failing? If you can take that a step further to build a knowledge base of failure, cause, resolution. So why is it failing? What caused it? And how do we resolve it? It's going to help build that knowledge base for your newer technicians that get hired. They can look up work order history, and it gives them a baseline for where they should start. Downtime, of course, we talked about that earlier. So whether that is tracked manually or whether that's automatically tracked through timestamps or automatically pushed in through an integration, critical to track your equipment with the most downtime. So you want to find out why it's having a downtime. Circle back to failure codes. Work order status. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but your work order status, I mean, you always have open, closed, but you have to have that secondary status. So why are the work orders remaining open? If we have all these open work orders, is it because they're waiting on parts? Is it because we're waiting on access to the machine? Is it because we're waiting on the vendor? Once you determine if you're trying to increase your work order completion rates, you need to know why they're not getting completed. I know it sounds kind of simple, but you need to see, oh, okay, we have 15% of our work orders waiting on parts. Well, we have to keep more parts on hand, or we have to pay more expedited shipping. We have to get the parts here so we can get them completed. And then your tasks. So hopefully standardizing those tasks, especially your multi-site organizations. We're going to talk about that when we go through multi-site, but standardizing tasks so that you're PMing your equipment the exact same way each time, regardless of the tech doing it or the location. So that equipment should have those SOPs. And then circling back to compliance information, again, criticality. So you want to be able to prioritize and escalate any, which actually I have twice. You want to be able to prioritize your work orders based on asset criticality, based on type of work order, based on the cost to production if the machine goes down, based on safety issues. So being able to have that work order automatically calculate based on different factors. And then anything that's regulated will typically also impact your criticality. If this is a highly regulated piece of equipment, being able to prioritize that work and get visibility if it's not getting completed. Preventative maintenance and inventory. Preventive maintenance, we talked about SOPs, with documenting how things should get done. I love having estimated time to complete. I think most groups do this, but I've actually seen a surprising number that do not. It's nice to put estimated time for your preventive maintenance because then you can report on estimated versus actual. So I'm scheduling this work order for 2 hours. It's consistently taking our team 3 hours to schedule that. Well, that has a ripple effect. Now my team's behind. They're not getting more work orders done, even though I'm scheduling them more in a day. So being able to evaluate, okay, after 6 months, if it consistently takes our team 3 hours, adjusting that estimated time and better planning and scheduling for increased work order completion. At the same time, knowing that it takes 90% of our group an hour to do this work order, but we see one plant that it's taking in 2 hours. What's the cause for that, and is there a gap there that we can address to help them, improve that time and save time? Who doesn't want an hour back a day? Inventory, of course, your nameplate information, part number, part description. Part numbers, for some of you on the line, this may be familiar, for some it might not. You should always have your own part number. It's not a best practice to use the supplier part number or the manufacturer's part number as your part number, because the supplier and the manufacturer could change. They could change the numbers, they could change, retire that part. So you always want to have your own part identifier, and that's how your team references it. But it's good to also have the supplier and the part number, the manufacturer part number reference, because your purchasing team will need this. So when you go to order a part, you may say, well, I need part 1, 2, 3, but your purchasing team has to reference that supplier part number. So making sure you're referencing all of them on that record. And then you can search by any of them as well. So whatever you're most comfortable searching by, that's great, but always have your own part number. That's just a good best practice. Lead time is nice. You could run reports of, these are the parts I need for the next 30 days. This is the date I need it, minus the lead time gives me an order by date, so it helps improve planning. Our goal is always to get work orders completed faster and on time, so get those planning stats in there. Alternate part numbers is actually, this was a customer suggestion. I cannot take credit for this. I thought this was so great, but I had a customer come up to me and say, if I run into my storeroom and I look in that bin on the shelf and there are no belts there, and I probably not a belt in a bin, but there are no parts in that bin, I need to look and see what other part could I use in a pinch that could be, I could go grab. So you can actually indicate different alternate parts on here as well. And then classification, that's one of your drop-down lists. Is this a spare? Is this PPE? Is this safety? Is this a critical part? That's usually, I actually have that as a different one. But having that drop-down list, so you can start to have different workflows set up according to your classifications. Tools, that's a good one. So I've been going on and on about data. We're almost through data. I'm keeping an eye on the time. I'm trying to keep the data portion to 40 minutes. But I've been going on about data because that's how you get the good metrics. That's how you get the nice, pretty reports that make your life easier. So we talked about this a little bit, but if you say, why do we have so many open work orders? Corporate's calling and saying, why are our stats so skewed? You can go in and say, well, 10% of our work is waiting on parts. So we have to improve that. We have to have better planning when it comes to parts, whether it's getting the right parts on time, taking into account that lead time we just talked about, whether it's previewing work for upcoming parts, making sure we have the right parts ready to go. Maybe a good portion of our work, 4%, is waiting for review. Quality has to go and review because it's regulated. Okay, well, if this is sitting here waiting for review, let's get alerts faster to quality. So daily email alerts, hey, you have these work orders. Let's get them have a dashboard they can easily access to review it. Let's get text messages, really kind of drill that in there. Again, when you're identifying the problems, you can find solutions to them, and that's how you can ultimately improve. Depreciation reports, I mentioned on the asset record, finding life expectancy, estimated end of life based on life expectancy. If you notice a pump is consistently failing, you can go in and say, well, yeah, it's failing. We were supposed to replace that 8 months ago. So we're going to start to see larger issues with this pump until we either replace it, or maybe we need to get a PM in place faster, so we're not leaving as much time between PMing that pump because we know it's older. So improving your scheduling as well. Multi-site. So I'm not going to go too in depth with multi-site, and there's a reason for it. Happy to have those conversations offline, but we had a really fantastic multi-site webinar last month. Some of you probably were on it. If you were able to attend, this was actually led by the director of our implementation team and our technical sales manager. Combined over 20 years of experience in maintenance and reliability, I think close to 30. But really good backgrounds in multi-site implementations here. They cover things that are common pitfalls and overall ways to increase adoption. So I'm going to cover it at a high level. If you like what you hear, we have this recorded on the website. We can also send it over. You can put it in the chat that you want to see it. So let us know, and we're happy to send you a follow-up link to it as well. But this is a great webinar. So multi-site practices, you're probably tired of hearing me say standardization by now and drop-down list, but you want standardization. You want to try to do that as much as possible. That includes those drop-down lists we've been talking about, because if you pull a report on equipment across multiple sites, you need it to be as standardized as possible. If it's going to be, what are my top failures for all of my CNC machines, my milling machines across my 50 plants? I want to have asset type standardized, so I have that milling machine. I want to have failure code standardized to pull that up. You can filter that by date range, have the causes in there. But having those drop-down lists is important. Example fields would be asset type, work order status, priority levels, and failure codes that we've talked about. Required fields, regardless of if I am at a plant in Philadelphia or a plant in London, I need to know that they're entering the right data and they're entering it in so I can pull those metrics and that data. And nomenclature and taxonomy. So there's different best practices for this. We actually have a pretty nice webinar on some ISO standards. So there is different ISO standards. I've seen organizations do different prefixes. So if it's multiple sites, it could be like 001, 002 for plant 1, plant 2, plant 3, and so on. So it had the number and the prefix and then the asset ID number. I've also seen it at a single site level if it's multiple departments using the program, where it would be, engineering, all assets start with E, facilities, all assets start with F. Really quick way to search and identify which asset is which department. Or if you talk more location-based, if I'm referring to a air handler in building 1 on the rooftop, it's going to be B1-RF-AHU1, and that's going to be building 1, rooftop, air handler 1. Functional locations, you can pull those in. So there's definitely different ways to start to identify what your nomenclature and taxonomy are for your equipment. Get together, figure out what's going to work for the group, and then standardize that across the board when it comes to your rollout. Last portion on data. I thought the last one was the last one, but last portion on data. We're still on track, so it's okay. How to get your data. So if you're migrating from a current CMS provider, if your CMS program is a local install, if it's installed on your server, it's probably going to be your IT team internally that'll get you that data because they're the ones supporting it. So contact your IT team, say, hey, I need a backup file of my data sent over to our CMS provider because we're transitioning. If you're using a SaaS-based program or a web-based program, you just contact that provider and say, I need a backup file of my database. Typically, you're always, again, it depends on the provider, but you should always be entitled to a backup file of your database. You should always own your data. So you just let them know. And you just want to let them know you want a full backup file. Unless you're planning to import from Excel, you do need to have that full backup file, like a .bak file or .mdb file. So some kind of like Access or SQL backup file, Oracle backup, and so on. Starting from scratch, there's a few ways. So that's really where people get intimidated. They say, Tara, we have so much data. How am I going to start with this? What am I going to do? So you can allocate resources internally. I've seen people hire interns and temps. I had a group that their wastewater treatment and biodiesel group. They had 5 different plants that they partnered with, and they had a temp. They actually hired temps at each one to assist in data collection. They ended up liking some of their temps so much, they hired them full time to help assist with the program. There are companies that offer data collection, so we might even have a few on the line today, but there are companies that do really good consulting, best practices data collection. The benefit for that is, an intern or a temp is just going to collect whatever you give them on a spreadsheet. Companies are going to give you recommendations. So they'll say, this is what we recommend that you collect. They'll often do pictures, barcoding, and kind of take into account, this is what we should be gathering to give you the metrics you need. So it's a much more best practice consultative approach. And again, those resources internally, and that's usually where it's the most intimidating. You say, Tara, I have 10 other jobs that I do. How am I going to collect all of this? That's kind of where I always think of the phrase, when I was little, I always had my parents tell me, and this is apparently a phrase only used in the US, not otherwise, but, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So how do you collect thousands of pieces of equipment? You just take it day by day. You say, I'm going to collect 20 pieces of equipment a day, or I'm going to get 10 pieces of equipment a day. And eventually you're going to get there. So that's where it comes to planning out that time for proper implementation. But the data is so critical. I kind of mentioned it's like your ingredients when you go to make a meal. If you start out with some pretty rotten and not good, ingredients, you're going to end up eating a pretty terrible meal. You want to start with really good ingredients, really good data to get the best possible outcome. Setting goals. All right, we're over data. I'm sure you guys are over it by now after hearing me talk about it for 44 minutes. So how do we plan out this implementation, and what kind of goals should we be doing? So short-term goals. Short-term goals are good for quick wins. You want to immediately show some return on investment for a program, why you got the system in place. It also is really good for keeping up the momentum. This is a big change, not just for you, but for your company and for your team. You want to show the benefits. Hey guys, you're completing more work orders. You're completing them faster. Look how much this is benefiting you. So get that momentum going, get those quick wins in there. And also, prioritizing those goals. So when you get a system in place, you're solving a problem. And the first goal should be that immediate problem. There's, of course, the domino effect of other problems that it could fix. But making sure that you're documenting and benchmarking, here's where we are today. Our work order on-time completion rate is at 50%. That is not okay. So documenting where you are today, and then in 12 months, seeing where you've gotten to. It's up to 99.2%, something like that. Long-term goals. A system like this is great for the short term, but don't forget about the long term. Don't forget about that continuous improvement. So once you look back 12 months later and see how well you did, say, okay, well, where else could we improve? So we've gotten our on-time work order completion rates up. We now want to get equipment downtime, down, which hopefully should be down as a result. But we want to focus on equipment downtime, or we want to focus on even further predicting when that failure could happen. So use the metrics that you have in your reports and say, what could we focus on for 2026? What could we focus on for 2027? And trying to get those planned and prioritized. You don't have to do all of it in one go. Focus each year on different priorities, and then you can justify it to your corporate and your leadership of, here's what we improved and here's our next plan year over year. Also corporate alignment. So I talked about the incident reporting earlier, but I worked with another group where automotive manufacturer, big focus on TPM, so total productive maintenance. And they wanted to track issues reported from operators, so those TPM work orders. They had a work order type equal to TPM. They had a standardized process for putting in TPM work orders and then for completing them. And they actually won a corporate award by being able to say, this is how we were able to track this, and this is how we were able to solve it. So really good for corporate alignment and supporting those kind of corporate initiatives as well. I've also had some people say to me, we're almost nervous. We're almost a little bit nervous to pull these metrics because they're going to be ugly. It's going to show when, the poor work order completion rate. It's going to show some bad downtime. I don't know if I want to look at it. But that's okay. It's okay to have those ugly metrics because by identifying the problem, you're taking the first step to finding a solution. So it's okay. It's never going to be worse. If you say this is our current work order completion and you make it a priority to identify that and work on it in the system, it's going to steadily get better. So don't be nervous about pulling the metrics. You're making those first steps. You're fixing the problem and getting to that root cause. Examples of goals, and I apologize for anyone that I used white writing here. I should really use black to see it, but I'll read it for anyone that's having trouble. So use the goals to have justification or buy-in for your new solution if you're currently trying to implement a solution. And then also outline the implementation path for the solution. So not only do you have goals, but you have a path to get there. Some examples of goals that I've seen customers use. We want to reduce our downtime. We want to increase our on-time work order completion rates. We want to have easily access to KPIs and reports, not just for our leadership, but also for compliance and audits. When you get audited, you don't have to scramble looking for paper in a filing cabinet. You just pull up a report and there you go. Reduce excess spend in inventory, so reduce expedited shipping, reduce overall on-hand excess quantities if those are tired parts, faster turnaround time for work orders, and then improve customer satisfaction. So there's good metrics you can use. Typically, they say implementing a new CMS program will save about 10 to 12% on things such as reduction in downtime, expedited shipping, overtime, labor time, and so on. So there's definitely good metrics you can use for that justification. So now we talked about setting goals. If we think about a goal without a plan is just a dream. So once you have those goals in place, it is great to have a plan to put it into action. The first step in the plan is who's going to be involved in this implementation. For those of you with single sites, single departments, this might just be you. This might just be a single 1 to 2 people that are saying, I'm going to make the initiative to put this in place. If you are talking about a larger multi-site implementation, it really should be a core team of individuals making those decisions. I always recommend the core committee, and I have my camera off, but I'm putting air quotes around that. So your core committee for getting a team in place. The CMS champion, so that is you. You are the one leading it. You are the center person that's joining all the little cogs together. Executive sponsor is likely going to be your leadership. That's the person that has approved this project with you and is stepping in when needed to help support you in this rollout. Project manager is optional, again, usually for larger rollouts. Great to have an internal project manager if you can swing it. I love working with internal project managers because they just herd all the cats for me. So they get everybody together, which is so nice. And they're really on track. So if you can do it and it's a multi-site or a more difficult rollout, talk with your team, see what project managers you have internally. IT team member. So if you're using a web-based program, probably not going to be too much IT needed. They may just want to review for security as you're evaluating. You'll want to bring in an IT team member to get approval. If you are looking at something that you're going to be installing on your own servers, that'll be much more heavily influenced by IT because they'll have to support that. So either way, you'll want to incorporate IT, just depending on what you're looking for. I kind of put the guru in quotes. I always wonder what to call this person, but this is the person that when you say, oh, well, on the floor, this operates this way, and this is how we get our work done. And then the guru raises his hand and says, well, that's what you may think, but it actually works this way. This is the person that's been with your organization for a long time. They know how things work on the floor. They're probably a leader at your organization where technicians are going to them for help and assistance. It's going to have that tribal knowledge and that seniority. that's someone that you should incorporate in a project like this, because not only will this directly impact them, but they can probably provide really good insight into how a system should be configured to support your day-to-day operations and how they work day to day. You want to make life easier for your team. This is the person that can provide that feedback. Reliability team member, if you have one, always good to have. If you have certified reliability leaders on there, if you have team members that have completed different courses like SMRP, really good to have those team members involved as well, because they can provide the best practices approaches. That may be you as well. You may be both, but having that reliability background is helpful. And then for multi-site only, multi-site representation. So for those of you with multiple sites, I can't tell you the number of times that I've seen it over the years where someone will say, well, I'm gonna create the standard for our corporation, and it's going to be exactly how I want it to look, and then everybody else can just use it. That's not a great look. You want to pull in representation from each region, each division, if you have multiple divisions, that can provide feedback. Because if you're going to create a standard configuration for your software, you should have people provide input. There should be different cultures, different divisions having that representation. You want to balance the too many chefs in a kitchen versus not having enough, but typically a good rule of thumb is 5 to 6 people should be on your core committee. And then your vendor partner, they should always bring a team to the table. So you should have team members that will be supporting you in both the rollout and continuous improvement. So asking your vendor partner, hey, what does my team look like? What does my support team look like? And how are you, my vendor partner there? How are you supporting me in it? Planning for success. This project deserves planning. It deserves a timeline. This shouldn't be something where you just say, oh, I'm going to get a system and we'll be up and running by tomorrow. I have had groups call me and say, I have an audit next week, so I need to buy your software today. I understand emergencies happen, but if you can plan, try to plan this out. You want to give enough time to implement and gather data. So if you have to be live by September 2026, then you want to make sure you're implementing the first 2 to 3 months before that, and then you're collecting your right data. You're alerting the team to the change. So making sure you have a few months or weeks, depending on the size of your implementation, in advance to plan. Making sure you're putting in budget. So if this is something that you want to plan to do as an improvement goal, put it in budget, contact providers and get those quotes. If this is multi-site, alert them of the upcoming change, so they should be involved, but making sure you're sending out those reminders of, hey, we are implementing your plant in the next 60 days. We're implementing them in the next 90 days. Having those alerts and reminders sent so they can prepare and also gather data. The best alerts I've seen, I actually saw were, I had a customer send out a video and it said, hi, we're implementing this new maintenance program. These are the reasons we're doing it and the benefits that you'll receive. So it really got people excited for the implementation and the change. And people watch videos more than read lengthy documents. And then also I've seen a lot of this recently where if you have like Teams or Slack, create your maintenance and reliability channel. And from different plants, say, hey guys, what metrics are you using for your audits? How are you using this? And get that group together internally to consolidate on best practices. And then change management, I'll just talk about this for a second. This is more 5 years down the road, your maintenance program is going to look a lot different than it does today. So you're going to want to change things. You'll want to change fields, drop downs, requirements. Putting a plan in place for who can approve those changes, how you escalate requests for changes, and then how you work with the vendor to get them in place is important. In 12 years, I've had customers I've worked with since the very beginning, and they've called me and said, hey, it's 5 years later, we want to start doing this. And I say, okay, great. Let's plan how we're going to roll it out. Let's plan which sites we're going to implement that at and how we're going to make sure people are aware of the change. I know I'm getting really short on time. I'm going to talk fast. This is the last portion. So choosing the right vendor partner. And I'm going to make this hopefully as neutral as possible. Forgive the checklist. This is more just for images. features is you want to solve for the fits the right features. They have to meet your requirements. But a vendor partner should be so much more than just having features. It should show longevity in in maintenance and reliability, because that's proven success. They should have experience in implementation and data migration, data collection. Because when you ask them questions like, hey, how do other customers do this? And how have other people done this in the past? They should provide that consultative approach. What does support look like? What does training look like? So going through and asking kind of these top 10 things to consider when it comes to selecting your vendor partner is really important. The features is one thing, but making sure you have that whole background is the other. And training, don't forget training. Training doesn't have to be, if you can purchase and do in-person training and different in-person sessions, that I think is the most beneficial. Remember, it's been a long time, but I was trained on software as well, and I found on-site to be the best. However, most organizations, most companies, CMS and EAM providers do offer online trainings and online universities. In-person trainings, group trainings. You can do like a train the trainer, where you train a core 5 people or a core 2 people to become your local subject matter experts, and then they go and train each of the plants. That's putting the responsibility on your team. Or you can do on-site training per site, where you have your vendor come on site and train each location. So if you want your own internal training, or if you want it to be external, you can do either. Do the online courses. I am the first person to roll my eyes and groan when I get an alert saying I have an online course assigned to me, but it's helpful. You're putting this much work into a successful program. You want to make sure that it's adopted and it has that long-term success. So really, really important. Don't skip the training. So in summary, and I'm doing this with 45 seconds to spare. So in summary, it's a journey. It's a big project. It's something that you're going to start with. How do I even begin, and how do I even get started? Take what we did today and talk about. We want to start with good data. We want to get our goals in place. We want to have the right vendor partner on that journey. Planning the right time to implement, and planning the right team to be involved with that implementation. And don't stop the journey. It's a loop, it's continuous improvement. So it's not just saying, oh, okay, it's implemented, we're done. It is going through and saying, how can we make the best of this, and how can we better ourselves for it? Begins with that first step. I know I left you no time for questions, but for any, happy to try to respond. I saw a few come in. Otherwise, we can respond to those questions and get those back to you as well. But Robin, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yes, thank you, Tara, and thank you for your expertise today, Tara. We do have a few questions, and to our audience, I will forward those to Tara in an email so that she'll have an opportunity to respond to you directly. And for our audience, thanks again for joining us today. You'll receive an email when the recording and meeting materials are available. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you again, Tara, for your time, and I'll close the meeting now.
Thank you.